Remember when I said they can't fix the filter? That's because they already did as much as they reasonably could while keeping the purgatory intact. It's probably Pirates will introduce you to the game's first 4-player dungeon, so stop it. If you did the Hall of the Novice completely, for the role you want to take in, you should be overgeared, making this a cakewalk. Of course, even if you haven't, there's a good chance everyone else is. You'll get the option of running the dungeon with a party of NPC adventurers or to use the Duty Finder. I personally recommend the Duty Finder, especially while you're a new player, because this is the time to learn. Let me explain how the Duty Finder works. If you've done the first two build tests, you'll likely understand the basics of queuing up. The queue pops up, finish the dungeon, that much is self-evident. Let's go into it. Final Fantasy XIV features evergreen content. If you queue it for Sastasha, the first dungeon in the game, let's assume that no one else in the game is queued up for that dungeon. Unlikely, but veteran players queued up for something else at the level in your left will be assigned to play with you. Because it's your first time doing the content, there'll be a pop-up saying that everyone gets a bonus reward for completing it, helping you clear the content for the first time. Final Fantasy XIV goes out of its way to engender positivity in its users across normal, non-hard mode content. You, as a new player, have undoubtedly noticed that you have a sprout icon next to your name. This indicates that you are a new player and sets the expectation that you are learning the video. As recently as that's as far as my experience goes, such a person in World of Warcraft would be an outcast, picked from groups and generally shunned for wasting better players' time. But Final Fantasy XIV is not World of Warcraft, and bad manners are a baneful offense. This does not mean negative experiences will never happen, but they are the exception more than the rule. This means that you can start a dungeon and say, hey, first time here, is there anything I should know? And most often you'll either get a no problem, or a hi, or even some helpful advice. So, due to the roulette system, which we'll get into later, players of all levels are doing all the content all the time. The vast majority of the game's content will be accessible to you, the player, without having to worry about finding people. You will have to do 2 more dungeons after this, Tamkar, Deep Cross, and Copperville Mine. While at the time of making this video, Sastasha and Tamkar are more or less the way they were. Copperville Mines has recently undergone an overhaul, and now acts as a training base for the The bosses will have more dramatic area of effect surface to the player's table. Nothing fatal that a group can't improvise with, but more a warning for what future dungeons will eventually have in store. I'd say in terms of teaching you, Copperville Mines does exactly what it needs to do to help flatten out the difficulty curve. It isn't difficult, it isn't punishing, but it provides more advanced dungeon mechanics in a way that teaches without making that teaching dry. So when getting started on the boss Copperville, keep your eyes open for zones not standing, glowing like they existed for previous dungeons, but now they're a little more active. Once the quest into a copper hell is complete, you'll be presented with some story sequences, which will introduce you to your special protagonist abilities. You will receive an offer to join a secret organization. As you progress, there will be optional blue quests you can unlock to gain access to extra level quests if you want. These quests are Hello Halikami at level 20, Braving New Decks in Vesper Bay at the Ravaging Sands at level 35, Dishonored Before Death in Ulda at level 38. And there are 2 additional dungeons I will mention in the Grand Company section for Fear at level 44 in Fortress Central Highlands, and Going for Gold at level 47 in Western Vermont. But again, unlocking these dungeons is entirely optional, and if you want, you can put off unlocking them for some time. There are benefits to having more dungeons unlocked, such as your leveling roulette popping up faster, but we'll talk about roulette later. But let's pause for a moment to discuss the previous dungeons, specifically AoE, or Area of Effect mechanics, in Final Fantasy XIV. Since Copperville was the first of the dungeons to employ them very prominently in multiple boss fights, with the exception of some very specific
Did I see you talking to Sven? I'll show you what I know.
Orange Area of Effect marker is a warning. The moment it goes away, the AoE effect is applied. This may seem counterintuitive, but the graphics after the ground indicator goes away are actually usually applied after the game determines whether or not you get hit by the area of effect. In other words, with the exception of specific AoE effects, either in hard mode or niche combat, it is generally perfectly safe to jump back into a blank AoE effect after the orange indicator has vanished. You can be hit by the graphics of the attack going on, and then 9 times out of 10 the effect will have missed. The reason I say 9 times out of 10, the 1 time out of 10 will be lingering AoE effects. Either way, this is important knowledge when you get to stacking AoE. For an example, there is nowhere in this arena without an AoE circle, but you can see the order in which the circles were created. The idea in this case is to pick the circle that was last created and step into the void when the first circle vanishes. By doing this, you can guarantee yourself not getting hit.
When the stakes are high at work, your tone matters. Grandma's advanced tone suggestions can help. Because when we write with just the right confident tone,
While the main quest will direct you the best of
I'll see you in
directing you to the Wake and the Sand, with returning to your needs in your game very soon, I recommend taking a break from the main quest here. At this point, if you are super interested in continuing the main plot, this is totally an option. However, completing Into a Copper Hell has unlocked another quest in Verdania's Inn if you're so inclined. Take an airship or teleport to Verdania. Then, in the room with the innkeeper, you will find a questmaster who will start the house that death built. If you paid especially close attention to the last few dungeon quests, you will have noticed a party of adventurers outside the dungeon you were going to explore. One of these parties just suffered a death. What follows in the house that death built cutscene is the remains of a group breaking up as the setup for later events. More importantly, you will be directed to the South Shroud. At the end of that quest line, a new type of dungeon will emerge. The Deep Dungeon, having the Palace of the Dead. The Palace of the Dead requires the player to be level 17 to start the opening quest. However, once unlocked, you can enter any normal combat class without restriction, including ones you've just unlocked and never played before. In the Palace of the Dead, any class, regardless of what level they are in the real game, they start out at level 1 when you enter floor 1. Your in-dungeon level increases rapidly as the game progresses through this roguelike dungeon. You can play it solo, or
The
with
sooner
a
you
group
find
of
the
friends.
claw.
But
Don't
most
let my
players
sister
will
do
simply
anything.
find a match
Trinkets,
party and
odds and
progress
ends,
through the
that sort
The
of
dungeon
thing.
is a roguelike in the sense that the dungeon itself will be randomized every time you attempt it, and you'll be expected to tackle it in 10-floor increments. Your job is to kill as many enemies as you can to cause the key symbol on the left side of your minimap to light up, turn red, and finally clear out blue. Once it hits blue, all players in the party have to step into the exit room to move to the next floor. When you hit the final floor, you will fight a boss, and that 10-floor section is complete. While the gameplay is fairly simplistic at lower floors, it does escalate. Floor 100 is also when the main story of Palace of the Dead ends. All floors above 100 can be thought of as optional challenge floors, or hard mode, and will need to be done either solo or with a mixed party. When you complete a 10-floor section, you will receive experience points for your out-of-dungeon level. And re-entering
I'm
queue,
right
you
behind
will be able to either progress to the next 10 levels, or you can delete your save file
I
and
understand.
restart. You can have up to 2 save files at once. If you're out-of-dungeon
Miss
level,
Valley.
level 50 or
The wilds
above,
here
and you
are
complete the
serviceable.
level 50 Realm Reborn quest,
Still
the
here.
alternate weapon, you will receive a gear currency, known
What do you
as
want me to carry?
Tombstone to Poetics. And if your level is current expansion maximum, you will earn in-game Tombstone currency as well. This means that
I'll show you what I know.
while not being the most efficient way of earning in-game currency, will always be to a player regardless of what stage
You've
of the
already
game
learned
they
all
are
I
in.
can teach
For
you.
in-game players, it is an alternative to roulettes, I mentioned earlier. But now, at low level, it is a very efficient way to level your character. That means, yes, you can level alternate classes to level 60, which just happens to be the Capital Free Crown, exclusively through this method if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, as there are plenty of other ways to level up, and it's generally best to interweave these methods together, but it is still possible to do. So let's break this down. The character sheet has your in-dungeon level, not to be confused with your real level. You'll also notice that your regular gear doesn't apply here. Instead, you'll have an ether pool arm and ether pool armor. When you or someone else in the party finds a silver chest in a deep dungeon run, they will either do nothing, increase the party's arm or armor value, or it will explode and do massive damage. The ether pool arm and armor values will persist between runs. Just know that building both your ether pool arm and armor up to 13 is your early game goal. We'll discuss why in a bit. Inside a deep dungeon, you will get special tools known as palmanders. In real life, a palmander was a scent ball that noblemen carried around, usually to mask the stench of plague victims. Palmanders appear on your character sheet as these orbs under items with the number next to them indicating if you have more than one. These are shared amongst the party, and while you can accumulate up to 3 of these palmanders at a time, you have to be conscious of how they're spent, as they are spent as a party. That said, in match parties, they are lost at the end of each 10-floor run, so it's smart to use them rather than have them wasted. That said, in fixed parties, either solo or with friends, they are saved inside of your save file between floor brackets. There are no roll restrictions in deep dungeons, so it is possible to have something as silly as 4 tanks or 4 healers, or any mixture of rolls. That's where commanders can even the scales and make one roll even better than it normally is. Commander of Steel reduces damage taken by the user by 40% per minute. It's usually good to save for tanks or whoever is pulling aggro the most. Best save 1 for the boss and give it to whoever will be tanking. Commander of Strength increases damage dealt and healing done by 30% per minute. Again, best save for damage healers, since it's by percentage. But ranking extra DPS players, just believe in the meme that healers are green DPS and tanks are blue DPS. Commanders of Sight reveal the back floor and reveal old traps with any surface on the ground that you can simply walk over. This is great for identifying the location of silver chests on your map if your goal is still to get 13 ether pool. Don't mess with a Commander of Safety, as you can already see the traps. Now, Commander of Safety removes all the traps on the floor. This is great if you don't have sight available. Important note though, this will not remove mimics from spawning treasure chests, nor will it stop silver chests from exploding instead of enhancing your ether pool. These will still happen, even with safety active. Commander Purity will remove the Pox status. Pox is given to players by a treasure chest monster known as a mimic. Pox can actually be avoided by either killing the mimic fast enough or having a tank your physical range DPS, such as not limited to a marker or guard, using a spell interruptibility. An interruptible spell is used by sending bar turning red for the duration of the cast. Players affected by Pox get a damage over time that lasts 10 minutes and doesn't allow health to regenerate while affected. So it's really good to just get rid of them. Although, if your party is on the ball, you should never need this. Commander of Witching turns all targets in 20 yards into frogs, chickens, and other weaklings. They can keep their health and defensive stats, but are unable to use any special attacks during this time. Great form of lure trap action and triggers and spawns a second pack of monsters in addition to the pack you are currently fighting. Note that if you do not have a tank, the Witching Commander acts as a mini taunt, and that hate will remain even when the effect wears off if that can survive. Commander of Raven will put a buff on the party that will automatically revive the first person to die, then remove the buff from the party. You can use it immediately upon obtaining it. Just to be sure, check the effects section on your character sheet to make sure it isn't already active. Commander of Intuition is a long-lasting buff commander, like Raven, that you should use immediately if it's not already in effect. It will attempt to find the accursed forward treasure chest on every floor you go to while the buff is active. Not every floor has a forward chest, and the buff will stick on the floor until you find the chest, at which point the buff will go away, and you are safe to use another intuition immediately. If you have the buff active, you will know there is treasure on that floor by the icon on the right side of the menu. The location will be displayed in the world as the beam of light. You need only stand over that spot for a few seconds to test what appears. Once you lose that item, it will be put into your character sheet.
I'll see you in
Note
pieces.
that you will only be given the reward when you finish that set of 10 floors. If you die or quit, you will not receive the reward. Much like Commanders of Raising, it can be wasted by using another one while the previous is still in effect. So keep an eye on your character sheet under the effects section. Commander of Serenity brings up a good point. When you go from floor to floor, the area above your minimap on the right side will sometimes show a status. That means the floor is enchanted. Sometimes these enchantments may be brutal, no abilities, or no items, or wounds that enhances monster damage and nerfs your damage. Other times enhancements are good, like unlimited sprint. Either way, Commander of Serenity turns that floor into a basic one with no special effects. It will be up to you to determine the best time to use it. Commander of Flight reduces the number of monsters on the next floor. Commander of Affluence increases the number of treasure coffers placed on the next floor. Commander of Lust turns the player into a succubus. The succubus casts fire AoEs that give the target water based stats, taking more damage for a limited time. The primary purpose of this comment is for one party member to use on the boss of the next bracket, allowing them to raise the damage more quickly. And the alternative use is when a lure trap kills extra enemies more than were intended. Either way, Scholar is the perfect job to use them because their NPC fairy will continue your play while the player is applying the debuff of the subject. Commander of Fortune increases the use of the based on death. Notice that the change is still random and only affects your current floor. You should be sure that a Commander of Flight was not used, because this is one of the few cases where you want as many monsters as possible. The best time to pop one of these is right at the start of the floor, before any monsters were killed. If you want to be efficient with your time, you can pop a Commander of Rage. We'll discuss that right now. So the Commander of Rage transforms you into a Manticore. It allows you to go on a rampage of one-hit killing monsters. This is great when you need to get rid of a lot of monsters quickly, and is good to use if a lure trap has popped, but there are no witch in there. It's also quite useful in conjunction with two other pop. The first is the aforementioned portrait, but the second is alteration. We'll get to that one. However, it's important to know the main part of one class or the knockback penalty.
Victory is yours!
If you're setting up to use a manticore. The last commander used in general play is the commander of alteration. This will change one or more enemies in a random room to a mimic or Corrigan, both of which have an innately higher test rock rate. This higher rate does test with the commander of Corrigan. Corrigans also offer bonus experience points when killed, although by 450 and above, the entire party will be capped at level 60, and that will be mentioned. Either way, it's a valid strategy the floor before to pop alteration. Then, when the floor begins, pop a surrender. If the floor has a static stopping range. Then use the fortune rage back to back and cash in on treasure chests, hoping that the rage lasts long enough to find the Corrigan or mimic spawned by the alteration. Such plans, however, should be discussed with the group. We discussed some traps with comments, but let's go over all the traps again for good measure. An enfeebling trap reduces all damage dealt while increasing damage taken. This status cannot be dispelled but has a short duration. Unlike other statuses, it doesn't completely stop the token trap, on the other hand, will turn you to a frog for 20 seconds, during which time you can take actions, use items, or open treasure chests. The toting status can't be dispelled either if you away them. Alluring trap spawns 3 random enemies of the type that are already on the floor to attack. The enemies will automatically detect into combat mode and accurate on the person triggered. Assuming you're already fighting other enemies when this happens, the standard procedure is to group them all up together, and then use a witching commander to take care of them all at once. A commander's rage can substitute, although not as well. And for players doing over floor 100 challenges, the standard procedure in groups trying to get further and further through is to actually allow the person who triggered the trap to be killed by the monster. Then the monster will set the signal, at which point the players will come in and resurrect the person who died. Generally, when pushing the harder floor 10% of the max health in dance, and can easily kill unprepared players, or put players into a state where they can easily be finished off by. If exploring the dungeon becomes a regular activity for you, you'll want to prepare for these by spending hot shards that you earn in the dungeon after a certain level. At Healing Makoto, who will sell you a stack of 20 sustaining potions for a single shard. These are powerful regeneration potions, and they have a cooldown that only lasts as long as they're effective. The standing potions rules are mandatory if you want to solo the Palace of the Dead with anything but a healer over a certain point, noting that you only really started in hot shards a little later. Finally, we have an eating trap, which causes pacify and silence, basically making players unable to do much damage. While certain classes will still be able to use some of their long cooldown abilities, most classes will be left swinging their weapon in an auto attack, and the debuff will last for 30 seconds. Note that if you can dispel it with the Insuma spell, if you are a caster, you can use an item known as Echo Drop to remove the silence effect, and then begin casting. Echo Drop costs about 99 gil a pop, which is a practically non-existent sum for high-level players. You can then carry as many as you want. They stack up to 999 per inventory slot. If you are a healer, after using Echo Drop, you can immediately use Tuna to remove the effect off other allies effectively. Once you understand the basic rules and have some ether tool equipment under your belt, the House of the Dead is actually quite easy. Your goal at the beginning is to clear the first 50 floors, to reach the floor 50 boss, and to amass an ether pool arm and armor rating of 13 above. Getting to this point can be difficult, because there are usually only a few players getting started. It's rare to find players going to middle ground. It's for that reason that I recommend taking advantage of Party Finder to create a group for Palace of the Dead. Add the comment for 1 to 50. It's a very handy tool that will see you through the whole thing. Either the floor 50 is also the conclusion of an unmarked side plot, which is occurring while you were doing the first 3 story lines, and culminated in the cutscene where you met Edda. The floor 50, House of the Dead, canonically takes place after the level 50 optional dungeon, Cantar's Cross Hall, meant to be done after a round of Roaring Queen questline is complete. But it is up to you whether you want to approach the concept of order or do the House of the Dead. Completing floor 50 and the attached quest will allow you to resume House of the Dead from floor 51 and matchmake for that floor, provided you have an ether pool arm and armor rating of 13 or higher. After finishing floor 50, even a KOTOR outside the dungeon will allow you to convert 10 levels of your ether pool arm into a grip. Those 10 levels will be lost and you can regain. Grips are a currency. Free grips will allow you to purchase a glowing weapon, the same glowing weapon that you use in the Palace of the Dead. You can also spend that glowing weapon and 6 more grips to create a bloody crimson weapon, the one that appears when you have very high ether pool arm levels. It is highly recommended you do not purchase them early on, or allow your ether pool to drop below 30 at any time, because doing that would prevent you from clearing up from 450 around. The recognized strategy for people who do House of the Dead frequently and use it to level their alternate jobs, or just manage the mode in general, they all get their in-dungeon ether pool to the cap of 99. Then they buy a grip, ensuring their dungeon power never drops below 89. And they allow to get to 99, spend 10, and repeat the process. Both the regular and crimson variants for level 60 weapons, and are intended to go into your glamour dresser for cosmetic purposes. We'll touch on the glamour dresser soon. To be clear about leveling your alternate jobs, your ether pool is across all classes and jobs. It is entirely possible to take a freshly unlocked role in the House of the Dead level 50. It will automatically be 60 for the purposes of House of the Dead. It will have a full kit of skills, although lacking job abilities. Maybe in general, you will earn a lot more experience at 450 than you will at 401. And again, the vast majority of players simply run 451 to 60, delete their file, and then repeat. But if you've got it in your head, you can wait for enough random players who want to continue or to open the party finder and create your own 4-player team. The trek from level 51 to 100 is not terribly difficult. It is slightly harder than brackets 1 through 50. And there are some things you should know. First and foremost, the number of kills you make influences the number and severity of enemy encounters. Like, as you know, you only need a certain number of randomized of monsters every floor to unlock the next floor. If you actively seek out and kill an excess number, later on you will encounter more monsters. This isn't much of a problem in match groups, as everything, including commanders, reset at different levels. However, in a fixed party, specifically in your saved games, this can become problematic as you approach level 100. In other words, your best strategy is to only kill as many monsters as possible. But at the same time, don't stress killing a few extra. It's only when a player goes ham and wastes a lot of time making sure everything else is dead that things get very silly later. Starting at floor 51 and onwards, you'll begin to earn commanders of revolution, which will turn the player into a leader. Looks like an angel. This is an anti-undead clause. It doesn't do too much against everything else. Its one real purpose is to kill the minions of the floor 100 boss, or otherwise to override rummers. So the recommendation is to save at least one resolution for the final boss. So now that we've mentioned match parties, let's talk about fixed parties for a second. Fixed parties are how the scorekeeping works. The leaderboards on the website. While you do acquire score from levels, scores are only displayed on floors over level 1. In terms of difficulty, things will stay pretty normal for the first couple sets above level 100. But around the third set, monster strength will start to balloon to the point where it's practical to fight more than a couple monsters at a time. The optimal way being to pull them one at a time and clear the absolute minimum possible. The prevailing strategy is to avoid as many monsters, identifying which monsters aggro on line of sight and which ones aggro based on sound. Sounds include casting, attacking, or going faster than a casual walk. Either way, once you know which monsters aggro from which, you are expected to sneak by as many of them as possible to the exit. Then pull individual monsters to the exit, as many as is needed to unlock it, and leave as quickly as possible. Players will often send out a scout, and if someone triggers a lure trap accidentally, the prevailing strategy is to allow that player to die and to resurrect them after the monsters who pulled from the trap have reset. So to repeat, above level 100 is an optional challenge mode for after the story is finished. It's for people who want a high-scoring leaderboard, or want the extra special accursed afford loot that you get from the highest floors, or the necromancer title you get for soloing the entire thing. So to conclude, be it floors 1 through 50, or farming 51 to 60 on repeat, or pushing to 100, or even pushing the hard challenge floors beyond 100. There is a place in Palace of the Dead for almost every skill level and temperament of play. If a roguelike dungeon is for you, anyway. If it's not, the entire system beginning to end is optional content. So now it occurs to me at the end that I've not explained what the accursed hoard actually is. To be frank, they are loot boxes. That is to say, a treasure item you give to the expedition bishop, and she will crack them open for you. They will contain a low-level material of questionable value, cosmetic flares, and other fairly worthless items. But also cosmetic items made to go in your glamour dresser or be sold on the market board via retainers. So yes, in addition to being able to level up your alternate classes and jobs, giving you in-game currency, if you do the current expansion level, having its own dedicated story, having earnable loot boxes and things you can sell, yes, all of this Palace of the Dead content is available in the free trial. So I recommend unlocking it right when it becomes available. How far you take it is up to you. Going back to the main quest, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. This is the beginning of the actual narrative for Realm Reborn. Everything before this was kind of a prologue, getting you established with the adventure. We'll get into the specifics of the main quest soon, but skip ahead and discuss some more features of Final Fantasy XIV. During this quest, you'll be told all the cutscenes that you've been given access to retained. If you are playing the free trial, this is not accurate, and you have not actually been given access to them. This is a way of encouraging people to buy the starter edition I'd recommend against this completely. If you thoroughly decide at this point that the game is for you, then purchase the complete edition, which comes with the current expansion. That will unlock the complete game for you. Otherwise, you're only a fraction through the free trial, and there's plenty more content. I'm going to explain this system to people who did decide to pick up the game here, or people who owned it from the start. The summoning bells near the market board in capital cities, or in the inn rooms at the adventure guild, are used to summon retainers. To get a retainer, go to the retainer go page in the capital city to create up to 2 criminals. Once created, then you will have bank storage equal to a normal player's inventory. An additional feature of this inventory is that there are many unique items in the game that you can only hold one of, such as treasure maps. When your retainer is holding one of these unique items, you are then free to get another one without technically giving up the first one. The retainer can only hold one of each in their inventory as well, but you can see how this feature can be used multiplied by the number of retainers you have. Additionally, they can have up to 20 items for sale. Other players will be able to view the items for sale on the market board. When putting up an item on the market board for sale through your retainer, you can click the Compare Prices button to bring up what the item is going for to better set your prices. It is generally accepted that you should only undercut people by 1 gil and not by large amounts, since other people will do the same, and if people drop the price too far, it will dramatically shift the market. There are many YouTube videos expounding on how lowering the prices too much hurts everybody. Having taken the time to do research, I found this to be mostly untrue and only applies to low demand items that are not often purchased. Market correction happens automatically through the community, as extremely low priced items are purchased and then placed back up on auction for higher prices, provided the demand is there. And that is the operative phrase, provided the demand is there. In such a situation, both the low seller, as well as anyone who tried to undercut them, benefit, as do people who purchase the exceedingly low-valued items only to resell them for a higher price. The only people inconvenienced by dropping an item's price dramatically are the people who wanted to take advantage of artificially high prices to get their items sold at a premium, when in fact the most an item deserves to be sold for is the lowest price someone is willing to sell it for, provided that amount is not less than the price you would get for selling it to an NPC, because in that case, just vendor the item. Now that I'm done being painfully honest, I'd actually prefer that prices stay high so that I can sell the dyes and clothing items I get for a profit. So yeah, do what those other people say online and only undercut by 1 gil, please. Every capital city contains a market board, as do locations for player homes. Although we won't be going into the details of the housing system in this video. The area outside of the 3 starting cities each have a quest to get started with the housing areas. But back to the market board itself. Here you can view the items for sale on your server. In the beginning, provided you are not deep diving into the crafting classes, this will not be extremely useful, as you'll get everything you need for combat classes from quests and dungeons, at least near the beginning of the game. But eventually, buying and selling becomes necessary if you want to get large amounts of money very quickly. Get cosmetic items for content you yourself are unwilling or unable to do, or excel quickly through crafting quests. Many people say that fashion is the end game, and we'll get back to that sentiment later. Just know that sentiment powers much of the market board. Next, we need to discuss the world server visit system. If you go to an Etherite of any of the 3 starting cities and select Visit Another World in your data center and travel to it, traveling to another server may take longer if the server you wish to travel to is a congested server and has a queue in it. While on another world server, you can do quests, dungeons, raids, pretty much any primary combat activity. There will be a handful of things you can't do, mostly relating to joining guilds, known in this game as free companies, getting married, attending weddings of other players getting married, and most notably, using retainers. Aside from the obvious playing with friends, the 2 largest advantages to cross-server travel include hunting rare monsters, known as hunt targets, staying alive on other servers when they are killed on your server, and the primary advantage above all others, is the use of that world's market board. Although your retainers can only post things to your server's market, you can visit other markets yourself and buy things from them. There are external websites, including but not limited to Universalis, and any other websites I name might be subject to change as domains are created and closed. All you really need to know is that there are multiple market board trackers online, and you can use them to compare prices across multiple servers. You can use these resources to compare prices anywhere in your region, and then go visit that server for the lowest price of the item you want. World visit servers is the only way to travel. If you log out and go to your character on the character select screen, you'll be able to right-click on them and click Visit Another Data Center. From there, you'll be able to visit any server in your region. At the time of making this video, it is region locked, which means the United States can only travel other United States servers, same for Europe, same for Asia. This might be subject to change in the future. The developers have said they will look into it. So if they change that, feel free to leave a comment telling everybody. At the time of posting this, on the Crystal Data Center in the United States, the thalmors server has a reputation of being the most degenerate, but in reality has an amazing nexus of players passing through Ul'dah. The Matthias server is known for serious roleplay. The Coral server is known for organizing hunt trains, both locally and on other servers. On the Ether data center, Gilgamesh is known for being hardcore raiders paradise, where you look for organized groups, known in the community as statics. The Qatar server is well known for being the home of several large YouTubers, and the Fairy server has several large pro-LGBT organizations running around it. The point is, every server has its own kind of culture, and while just popping over for a few minutes, everything may seem homogenous to the point where people would ask, what's the point of servers? Any extended socialization using the world visit and data travel features make it abundantly clear that beyond just normal activities in the game, the social scenes are very different server to server. That said, you do not need to be a part of a free company, as other games would call guild or clan. The majority of the game's activities are organized either over private chat servers such as Discord, or through the use of cross-world link shells, or CWLs for short. A CWLS is like a chat room that goes cross-server on the same data center. They work in areas where even tells can't be sent. The important thing to know about a CWLS is that while you join them on your data center, you can only join them on another data center, and you can only see messages from the ones you belong to while on the data center that CWLS is based out of. Note that free trial players can only join cross-world benefits on create them regardless of what. And you may be asking, what are the points of free companies? Well, there are really the social systems and activities that free companies can engage in, including providing active bucks for all players, and shared property ownership where the players can actually get a room in the free company estate. But again, those benefits are all limited to the server you are based out of.
Overhears.
The vast majority of the
You
game
did
can
it.
be
You killed it.
experienced
Now
across
put me down
multiple
before anything
servers.
else shows
One
up.
of the most useful features of data center travel,
Yes,
while
the
on other
claw.
data
I know
centers,
how
is
it
queuing
works.
up for
The
a
claw, the
dungeon,
markings, the door
trial,
on the Hall of
raid,
Stories. I know how
roulette.
they all fit
Adventuring
together.
forays like
Help me
Eureka,
down and I'll
Valkyrie,
show
and
you.
Thalmors will
You
be
won't
those
believe
later.
the power
Or
the
using
Nords
the
have
party
hidden
finder.
there.
Any of these will
Sweet
put you
breath
into
of
a
arcade,
pool of
thank you.
players from that data center instead of yours. This means that you can run into
It's
very
coming
different
loose. I
pools
can
of players
feel it.
you've never had a chance to meet on your own data center. Sometimes if you're having trouble finding players for a
Why should I
very
share the treasure with
specific
anyone?
multiplayer zone like Eureka, Aja, Zatno, or Delis, it can benefit you, the data center, and look for players to group up with on another data
Knew it.
center, because maybe there's no one on that data center to play looking for that
You win.
there is on a different one. Retainers are amazing.
This
Each major city, you are assigned to express titles of ill-conceived adventure. Upon completing it, you will receive 6 silver coins known as adventures, and your adventure mechanic will operate. You will be able to assign a class to your retainer. That class will be one you have unlocked. Then you will need to go equip them with the weapon of that class. Once they are equipped, you can return with loot after an hour for a adventure or 18 hours for a large venture. The normal ventures cost 1 of those silver coins, and the large ventures cost 2. What items you can send them to depends on their class and level, noting that there is one pool of items for combat classes and separate pools for mining, botany, and fishing classes. When returning from the venture, they will earn experience points and level up based on the venture's level. They will raise their level higher in a class than you, meaning if you have mining class to level 5, then a mining trained retainer cannot go beyond level 5, no matter how many ventures they complete. But for your crafting classes, there is no better way of obtaining massive amounts of ingredients than to have a retainer dig for you while you're doing other things, or even gathering other ingredients yourself. As retainers level up, they will be able to gather more level-appropriate items, and the pool of what they can bring back will grow. That said, eventually you will have to start gearing them up for them to bring specific better items. At level 5, on quick exploration, will also cost 2 ventures. Takes 1 hour, but has no special gear requirements, and will bring back despite not having a hard item requirement. Level appropriate gear does give a greater chance of returning with a high quality item when doing a quick exploration. Occasionally, a quick exploration will bring back a venture coffin. These most often will contain random dye for clothing or other tie-in materials. We'll get into dyes soon. Just know that the general purpose white dye and general purpose jet black dye, and depending on the service, can go for hundreds of thousands of gills should you sell it on the market. In that sense, ventures can be a massive. The only real limitations are time and how many venture coins you can pay your retainers. Venture coins can be obtained most easily from your grand company. We'll touch on grand companies soon. You can also get them from optional daily quest hubs known as beast tribes, and from hunt currency, both for the base game and the first 2 expansion packs, as well as other sources. In other words, there are a myriad of ways to get the coins to pay your retainers with. And you're Now that I've finished singing the praises of retainers and how super useful they are to have, I'm going to talk about the really only way a player paying extra money gets an advantage over players who do not pay extra money in the entire video game. That is the retainer. Remember how I said you can have 2 retainers to start with? Some players get no players who only get. Then you can contract up to 7 more logs. That's the account management website for extra services. The cost of the time of hosting this is roughly $2 per retainer per month, for a total of $14 extra for the 7, bringing your retainer total to 9. A 10th retainer can be purchased with the premium access to the mobile app. At the time of hosting this, costs roughly $5 US. Along with the extra retainer, you would get an extra chocobo saddlebag. We'll discuss the saddlebags when we get to chocobo. Suffice to say, more storage space. In other words, you can have up to 8 additional retainers through real-life money fees per month. These retainers have all the benefits of the ones you get access to. More bank space, more items to put up for sale, and yes, more ventures running at the time, provided you have the coins to pay. I never had a problem since it is an inherently cooperative and it's not benefit from the law. In fact, I've taken advantage of the system myself with some extra retainers that I pay for sometimes don't. Currently, my inactive retainers, I set them up as long for materials and other items I may want to retrieve in a future. That said, I and I need any form of pay to stop those people from the game. Just full stop. No ifs, ands, or buts. And it would be dishonest to try to get those people hooked on the game without at least warning them about this part of it. Which is why I made sure to add this section. Again, Square Enix is not paying me to sell you this game, so I'll represent it as fairly as I can from my own biased viewpoints. Bank space, auction house, ventures. It's all pay to win over a normal player's ability to amass wealth and store extra gear. By a factor of 5, it fully paid for. talking about retainers, there's a quest NPC outside the Awakened Sands named Skyrim we need to discuss really quickly. She will have 2 quests for battle classes, 1 for crafting classes. Upon completion of her first 2 quests, you unlock dyes and glamours respectively. Dyes, the name implies, allows you to color a costume, changing the color of that item when worn. Not every item can be dyed. Many items have dyeable and undyeable variants you can find out in the world. Although dyes can be applied to items directly, this is often seen as wasteful in favor of setting up dyes through a glamour plate. Next, we have glamours themselves. 2 separate glamour systems will unlock at the same time, glamours and glamour plates. The original system has you consume a glamour prism to take an item from your inventory and overwrite the appearance with another item from your inventory. The newer of the 2 systems unlocked at the same time. Those are glamour plates. These are considered the standard. Glamour plates can be used from your character sheet and applied in any location marked a sanctuary. You can know that you are in a sanctuary by the small moon next to your character's experience bar, indicating you are earning rested experience. Rested experience builds up over time and is a very minor boost to the amount of EXP you get for killing monsters. It is a reward for either logging off in a town or a city, or just hanging around in the town or city in general. Its purpose is to foster the idea of coming home after an adventure. Either way, applying glamour plate will overwrite your gear's current appearance without spending any glamour prisms to do it. It's just a uniform swap. Glamour plates can be tied to specific gear sets. So if you have 2 jobs in the same role that use the same gear, you can swap glamour plates when you swap jobs, thereby changing the outfit's appearance. For example, Red Mage and Black Mage can share a gear set, as do Warrior and Paladin. But as long as you happen to be in a sanctuary when you do the swap, which swaps your weapon, therefore your class, and each of those gear sets are set to a different glamour plate, it will automatically swap your appearance. Although glamour plates can be applied in any sanctuary, they can only be configured in a location with a glamour dresser. Glamour dressers at present are located in the inn-rooms in capital cities, as well as your private quarters for your Grand Company squadrons. We'll be discussing Grand Companies soon. At the dresser, you can select an item from your inventory and spend a glamour prism to have it placed within the dresser. At this time, 800 items may be in the dresser. The dresser makes use of the items you've placed inside to create glamour plates. These plates can be saved and applied at the dresser, and then freely applied and swapped between any sanctuary in the game. The glamour prism cost is for placing the item in the dresser you want to use the appearance of, not in applying the glamour. A glamour plate may also be set up using items from the armoire. The armoire is a container that also exists within inn-rooms, and will take your unique artifact class gear from Realm Reborn, as well as any of their seasonal or special one-time rewards, and store them for you at no cost to your glamour dresser, but freely usable from the dresser in glamour plates. Only specific items go in, but they don't count for your glamour limit. So now that you have access to the glamour dresser, keep an eye out for cosmetic items. Retainer Ventures, Palace of the Dead, and Adventurer Foray lockboxes all have a chance of dropping these cosmetic items. Cosmetic items are typically level 1 with no practical stats to speak of. They are designed by their very nature to go into the glamour dresser and overwrite the appearance of your other gear items in order to create unique outfits and stuff. They are often, but not always, dyeable, and they often, but not always, fetch a high price on the market board, for the reason of fashion being in the game, in the minds of some players. The concept of assembling the absolutely best outfits and attending public gatherings and announcing shout chat at the Aetherites of Ul'dah, Redania, and Limsa is something of a ritual for the social spaces of Final Fantasy XIV. It is in many senses the metaverse that Mark Zuckerberg, at least at the time of speaking this, failed to cultivate out of the face of it. But other games, like Second Life or VR Chat, managed to nail perfectly. Self-expression through outfits is one of the core tenets of Final Fantasy XIV's fashion management. To this end, there is a website named the Yours Yet Collection I highly recommend checking out, where people post their outfits for you to be able to copy. Now, I've neglected mentioning one thing, and that's the acquisition of glamour prisms to make the system work. If you talk to Swergine as a crafting class, then she will offer you a quest that will unlock a recipe for crafting fluid prisms that you can use to buy glamour prisms. This is by far the most involved way to get glamour prisms, but is pushed by the game. The easiest way to get glamour prisms is simply to buy them for Grand Company seals. And we'll discuss Grand Companies later, but you can also buy them for Guild on the market board. As with all market board purchase recommendations, you should use an external site to determine which server in your region sells them cheapest, then employ data center travel to get them at the lowest price. Other notable locations to use glamour prisms for are the player versus player or PvP system, via a currency known as wolf marks, and the shared fate system we'll discuss in the level 71 to 90 range. Both of these alternatives are far less efficient than either Grand Company or market board. It's perfectly normal for people to have a stack of a few hundred glamour prisms, noting that they stack 999. And having spoken to many people, the casual player appears to usually fill up a little less than half of their dresser by the time they reach level 90. While the fashion fanatics, their fashion dressers is spilled over into their huge short. So it varies based on the individual. Glamour dispellers are also a thing, but only used if you want to restore an item's original appearance back to its original state. This is only useful in niche situations, because in the vast majority of situations, you'll simply be overwriting the glamour appearance with a different glamour appearance. The level 19 main quest, Forging the Spirit, deals directly with unlocking materia. How materia works is you build up a stack inside your gear called Spirit Bond. When Spirit Bond hits maximum, you'll be able to create a materia from a piece of gear. The gear's Spirit Bond is reset to 0, and it has to build up again to create another piece of materia. Materia you create may be then socketed into gear at a materia melder in any capital city for a fee, or free from another player with significant levels in crafting to match that item. NPCs may fill the number of sockets present in gear with appropriate levels of material. To get another player to melt gear for you, however, you'll have to right-click on them and request melt. It will use the material in your inventory. Nothing needs to be traded to the other player. Although some crafting classes will require materia during a Realm Reborn, this feature is not required. Make no mistake, properly melded, the stat bonuses will help you every step of the game. However, materia as a whole aren't very important unless you're pushing extreme or savage mode content, as the primary story content isn't that difficult. The game is progressive and gets more difficult the further you get into it. As such, it is most common for players to ignore materia until around the expansion before, or 10 levels before what is known as current content. Then players who hit max level ensure that the job they hit max level with is fully melded at pretty much all times. Players equipped with the latest in-game Cornerstone gear with the 2 Becking slot materia on every piece is considered normal. As for players who really want to push extreme, savage, or ultimate content, they often have a tendency to buy the latest crafted gear, and then have another player overmeld that gear. Overmelding is the process of taking a piece of gear with 2 materia slots and socketing 5 materia gear. Overmelding can't be done on any gear that says advanced melding forbidden, which is usually all gear that is not player crafted. Each piece of material you will have to place on a gear beyond the normal limit has a smaller and smaller chance of working, and failures will destroy the material you attempt to socket on the gear. That is why there is an option to auto-attempt until it works. It is not uncommon to lose 30, 50, 80 materia in a single attempt to overmeld a single slot. As you put on your 4th or 5th materia, the size of the materia that will fit gets smaller as well, meaning you'll have to use lower ranked materia instead of the current Becking slots. The act of placing 5 materia onto a 2-item slot is often referred in the community as pentamelding and is considered extremely expensive. This is the primary reason why certain materia have inflated market values. As a result, it's considered exceptionally profitable for players doing current content to extract materia as soon as their Spirit Bond hits maximum. available from the Grand Company squadrons. The benefit of a manual over a potion is that potion's effect goes away when you die, whereas manuals stay persistent. Finally, crafters can create high-quality, superior spirit bond potions, which are twice as good as the ones you buy from the Grand Company. If you wish to learn to meld material yourself and save yourself the fees of having NPCs meld here for you, bring a level 19 crafting class or above to the quest Waking the Spirit in Central Phenomenon returning at level 75 and completing melding materia upgrade will unlock advanced materia melding, which will allow you to enter more gear. For crafting classes, pentamelding is generally considered necessary as best slot in extra craft without having to rely on food and potions. So that the absolute best crafter you could be to be the in-the-game crafter, you're going to be spending a lot of material. Although again, for most players running combat jobs, pentamelding is unnecessary if you're not looking to push extreme savage ultimate content. Likewise, crafters just looking to enjoy themselves and not push the highest levels of master crafting don't. In general, the vast majority of players simply enjoy standard melding. The next major step of the main story includes completing a trials level trials for Realm Reborn post-level 50 content called 4-player boss battles. Like dungeons, just a boss battle. Only the hard mode versions of trials drop loose, meaning the normal modes are just for story progress. They are few and far between outside the first tutorial ones, and tend to be climactic moments in the story. Once Realm Reborn's on-release story content is complete, all future trials will be 8-player content, or they will remain for the rest of the game. Although players will often remark how 8-player content is anxiety-producing compared to the smaller 4-man dungeon, if you think about it logically, the reverse should be true. Ignoring the optional harder modes, which are their own boost. When dealing with standard story trials, more players means less personal responsibility you as an individual have. 2 tanks mean if one dies, the other can take over until the other one is resurrected. 2 healers mean if one healer dies or messes up in some way, the other can pick up the slack. And 4 damage dealers means you are not responsible for a lion's share of the group's damage output. In story content, 8 players means the content is less prone to failure, not more. Although an overwhelming majority of first-time players succeed in story trial content on their first try, there is also an ecosystem built into the game for older content, where every time a group gets annihilated, or as the popular term goes, wiped, they receive an echo buff. In terms of the game's canon, you didn't fail to kill the boss. You had a vision in a future in which you failed to kill the boss and learned from it. This manifests mechanically as a 5 or 10% buff to HP, attack power, and healing every time your group fails to finish, up to a maximum of 25 or 50% depending on the content in question. This mechanic exists for people trying to complete the story and allows groups of varying skills to accomplish previously released content. Most often, current newly released content doesn't have the echo, but then it gets added after newer content after it is added, so that players can feel challenged by current content, but then as the content becomes older, they don't have to feel that challenge anymore if they want. For players who specifically want a challenge without those benefits, the silent echo mode can be applied when starting a pre-organized or party finder group, and that will nullify this mechanic. Furthermore, minimum eye level can be applied so players are unable to overgear content if gear released after that content. Your gear is effectively scaled down to whatever the minimum required amount was to enter the place, assuming you use that feature. This means that players craving a challenge and not just story progress can have it. This system can also be done with dungeons and raids. Mechanically speaking, there is nothing overtly challenging in the first few trials. They are designed to teach you about the game gradually. I've not mentioned this until now, but non-current solo content also contains zone buff called Brilliant Conviction. That makes the content easier in several ways. Much like the Echo, it can be right-clicked off of your buff section in your user interface. But that will make the content much harder than it should be as a new player. In short, trials should be easy. Old content should be easy. If you fail, it gets easier, and you can make it not easy if you want. But that only caters to a very specific type of player. We'll be spoiling some Realm Reborn content in order of relevance. So if by chance you want an unspoiled main story, go to the timestamps in the video and avoid anything marked MSQ. But really, you should just close the window and check back with this video through the timestamps after you've played through the current content, if you don't want to be spoiled. Everything up until now has been a huge primer for players looking to get started, and if I hadn't made it clear yet, I highly recommend getting started. But with that out of the way, in the main story of Realm Reborn, you take on the role of a scion of the Seventh Dawn. The Scions are a spin-off group from the Circle of Knowing, from the now shut down 1.0 version of the game. Led by the great Louis Swall, your place in the Scions is the Resident God Slayer, the ability that gives you the visions, also makes you immune to the lifelong mind control by the primal gods, who if left summoned will devour everything in the land and convert everyone into their thralls. After quite a bit of back and forth in the story, you start with your first trial against Heathcliff. Once you've defeated the primal god, emissaries from the three grand companies will show up. Super impressive. After you are the god slayers, will offer you positions within their organization. Much like before, when you defeated the gargoyle and the Inferno and were given a celebration cutscene revealing your destiny, you will be sent to the three city-states, not just to your original one, and hear a speech in each one. This is a great introduction to the insufferable brat named Alphen. I will say in a non-specific, general way that he will become one of the most beloved characters the game has to offer, and that he has to legitimately earn that status, because he is currently a jerk. This game features heavy character development over the course of its story. People, be them Mandilia, Thancred, Ishtola, the receptionist Takaru, they are not the same people by the time you finish the main story than they were in the beginning. That's why skipping sections of the main quest is such a precarious thing, because to understand and appreciate who they eventually were, you really need to see where they came from. To move on, once you've heard all three speeches, this is where we start talking about the grand companies. The main story quest will direct you to join one of the three grand companies. Other than their headquarters being in a city you prefer, there is no mechanical benefit of one grand company over another. It's purely cosmetic on a surface level. All three grand companies act mechanically identical, and later you'll be able to transfer between them as you see fit. So it's not even a permanent choice. It will take an extra quest into the Grand Company before its features become available to you, but once they do, there are a lot of ways to off the previous activity. And the way to take part in that profit is to acquire a new type of currency, Grand Company seals. All of those fates you saw around the world will now award company seals.